mynews.studio.
Ethiopia's highways, once crowded with aging diesel vehicles, now have the steady hum of electric cars. But can an African country really skip over fossil fuels before the richest nations manage to?
Today is October 13th, 2025. Let's get into Ethiopia's ban on combustion engine vehicles. First, why did Ethiopia make such a big move, and how did it become the first to block all imports of internal combustion vehicles, including trucks?
It's a huge change. Back in January 2024, Ethiopia banned imports of all new and used combustion engine cars. Then, just this month, they extended the ban to include diesel and gas trucks too. The main goal? To reach carbon-neutral growth by 2030, under what they call the Climate-Resilient Green Economy Plan. They're relying on their hydropower. Over 90% of the country's electricity comes from renewables, mostly from the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
So the idea is to skip the whole fossil fuel era. But what made that possible? Wasn't car ownership already pretty rare in Ethiopia?
Right, car ownership was low, one of the lowest in Africa. Most people drove old imported cars. Chronic fuel shortages, high import duties, and a weak currency kept cars expensive. The government saw a chance, reduce the $6 to $7 billion spent each year on fuel, improve air quality, and make transport cheaper.
And it wasn't just about banning combustion vehicles. The government actually made electric vehicles a lot more appealing, didn't they?
Yes, they scrapped VAT, surtax, and excise taxes on electric vehicle imports. They also slashed duties on kits for partially assembled EVs coming into the country. Plus, there were generous tax breaks for companies willing to assemble or service EVs locally. The result? By the end of 2025, more than 100,000 EVs were registered, up from just a few thousand.
What did that look like on the streets, especially in Addis Ababa?
The city's landscape changed. Now electric cars and buses are common. The government also started converting thousands of buses to run on natural gas. People's fuel expenses dropped by nearly half. But there's a catch. Can the grid support all these vehicles?
That's really the central issue. Electricity in Ethiopia is cheap, about 3 cents per kilowatt hour, and mostly clean. But only 55% of Ethiopians actually have access to the grid. And in the capital, there are only 100 to 150 charging stations, when experts say they need more than 1,000.
And the grid isn't always reliable. Blackouts are common. The government is partnering with private firms to upgrade infrastructure, but progress is slow. The question is, can they increase capacity in time?
How have people responded, especially outside the cities?
Urban residents mostly support the shift. They're saving money. But affordability remains a problem for lower-income groups. Most EVs are still being bought by the urban middle class. In rural areas, where grid access is limited, the change is less visible.
What about maintenance? Electric vehicles are new for most Ethiopians, and there aren't many trained technicians or spare parts. What's being done about that?
The Ministry of Transport and Logistics is funding technical training and offering incentives to private investors to set up service centers, but there's still a shortage of skilled technicians. High upfront costs are another barrier, even with the tax breaks.
So is this approach sustainable? What needs to happen for Ethiopia to give everyone fair access to EVs and a reliable grid?
It'll take steady investment in the grid, in charging stations, and in training a workforce. The government has to keep up the incentives and figure out ways to make EVs affordable, maybe through financing options for people with lower incomes.
Looking beyond Ethiopia, does this set an example for other developing countries? Is it a blueprint others could follow?
It pushes back against the idea that only wealthy countries can move quickly on clean technologies. Ethiopia is showing it's possible to leapfrog fossil fuels, but only if there's strong political will and a readiness to tackle infrastructure gaps directly.
But those infrastructure and affordability challenges are real. If other countries want to follow, they'll need to address those first.
Exactly. This isn't just a story about banning combustion engines. It's about dealing with the tough realities of fast-paced change.
Ethiopia's electric gamble is shifting how people think about climate action in the global south. Whether it works or not, the world is paying attention.
That wraps up today's episode. Ethiopia's leap shows both what's possible and what remains uncertain when a country goes all in on electrification.
Thanks for listening. We covered Ethiopia's bold EV policy, its immediate effects, and some of the big questions that are still out there.
We appreciate you tuning in. This episode was brought to you by mynews.studio. Try it free today.